Okay, it's like this. The Steelers are 8-2. The Browns are 2-8. If the Steelers lose tomorrow night in Cleveland, it won't be because of some nebulous pattern or other mythical variables. Good afternoon to you. Good Wednesday afternoon. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is the new Double Shot Show. It comes your way every weekday afternoon. Kickoff is at 8:20 p.m. tomorrow. That's when everything comes into play, and that's when everything else gets thrown out. I swear I have seen, heard, and read more stuff over the past 72 hours about how, let me see if I can find some of these here. The Steelers have never won a road divisional Thursday night game. Never. They're 0-7 all time, and they're 0-5 under Mike Tomlin. Tomlin is 2-8 on the road in general on Thursday nights. What does that mean? I mean, what is the vigorish there? You know, what is the thing that you're looking for that says, aha, it's Cleveland. It's not even they don't even get on a plane. I don't know how many of you know this, but they actually bus to Cleveland and vice versa. Nobody gets on an aircraft. It's Cleveland. You just go up the road. I don't even know if I'd call that a road trip, even though it's the one in which they actually use a road. There's nothing to this. There's actually nothing to the idea that they would play down to their competition. And that's the one that comes up most often. The other ones you can kind of just laugh off. But this one is, well, I remember that time they went out to the West Coast and they lost to the Raiders in Oakland, and they should have beaten the Raiders by about 150 points. And they played really poorly. And it's because they played down to their competition. If you ever bring this up with an actual NFL player, present or past, they will quite literally laugh at you. And the reasons for it are so much more stark than what you might imagine. Like, they'll be aware of when an opponent is really good. They'll be aware of when an opponent is really bad. I will never forget David DeCastro telling me before a trip to Cleveland, of all things, back when the Browns were, 0 and whatever. And he said, you know what? We just got to take care of business. He said, that's an effing college team up there. That was what he said. And you know what? They did. They went up there and they took care of business. You know why? Because the Browns really were an effing college team at that point. But when you're in an NFL game, this isn't me talking. This is them. Over many, many years, you can't ease up. You can't let up. It doesn't exist in the sport of football. If you do that, do you know what happens to you? That's right. You either get physically embarrassed, or you get injured, or you get seriously injured. Think about this for a second. Put yourself in the shoes of the athlete and line up across from anybody on any team, any of the 32 teams from best to worst. It's just you against that individual. And that individual has every reason to want to maul you, not to beat you, but to just wreck you. And if you allow that to happen, think about what we're saying here. So look at the game from the standpoint of the game. Look at the game from, all right, what do they need to do to, I don't know, make sure that Jameis Winston isn't hurting them, or that Myles Garrett isn't running up his PFF stats or whatever else here. But don't be thinking about this from the idea that they're going to go in there and go, oh yeah, there's an easy one. It just doesn't happen. It's not a thing. It's not reality. When we come back, I'll be joined by Chris Halleck.
DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
Joined now by Chris Halleck. Far be it from us to avoid the lowest possible hanging fruit in the Pittsburgh-Cleveland conversation. But, I mean, how do you do this without talking about TJ Watt and Myles Garrett when they've been, depending on your viewpoint or whether or not your company is owned by Chris Collinsworth, 1 and 2 in the NFL defensively for quite some time now? And, you know, I don't know if Garrett's 2 now, but I know that Watt's 1.
Yeah, Watt right now is actually the odds-on favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year, and he's having another great season. And the thing is that he's doing it without leading the league in sacks. He's got, I think, 7.5 on the season, which is kind of a low total for him based off of what he's done whenever he's been able to play a pretty full season. But look at everything else that he's doing. He's forcing fumbles. He's wrapping up tackles for loss. He's wreaking havoc. He's making big-time plays in like huge moments. Like he really is playing like the best defensive player. But I mean, we can't just like automatically rule out the reigning defensive player of the year, right?
Well, you really can't, because you can also just go through all of the statistics and everything. TJ leads Garrett in every single statistic except for the infamous PFF pass rush win rate. And I got to tell you, I see even more to TJ's game this year. I think now that we've all kind of become cognizant of TJ constantly being in the DPOY running, that you're thinking about his numbers. And when he doesn't come through with a bunch of sacks like what happened in Landover, everyone goes, "Where's TJ? What happened to TJ? What happened to TJ?" Because you're used to seeing the numbers. You're used to seeing the big right leg kick up. Well, in that game and in the game after, he was asked to do something by the coaching staff that is not going to bring you numbers, is it?
No, he was pretty much told, and as was the rest of the defensive front, don't let Jaden Daniels and Lamar Jackson improvise and turn those, scrambles outside the pocket into big, gigantic chunks on the ground. And that they held Jaden Daniels to single-digit rushing yards and
4 yards.
Yeah, and then Lamar Jackson, while he had a couple of really big runs and read options, other than that, they didn't really let him run, especially when he was trying to throw the ball. They actually made him throw the ball whenever he was trying to throw it, and so that in and of itself is a big-time success against a quarterback of Lamar Jackson's talent level. And the proof is in the pudding to me just by watching the film. I don't even necessarily need numbers. You sit there and you watch what TJ is doing as a defensive player, not as a pass rusher. And I'm not taking anything away from what Myles Garrett does as a pass rusher. He is as dangerous of one in this league as anybody else. But outside of that, TJ is this has been the argument the entire time for like the pro Watt train, is just that he is a better overall defensive player. He makes plays in a number of different ways that doesn't just include bringing the quarterback to the ground.
Well, let's get technical here too, because one of the things that works against TJ is that he's held nonstop and there aren't calls on this. Now, you've heard and I've heard that that's because there's a certain type of move that he executes that if you use that move, the ref's not going to give you the benefit of the doubt. As a result, TJ is not going to get to the quarterback as often as Garrett does. Garrett is not really a move guy as much as he's just an overwhelming beast of a human who's just going to shed bodies. Mm-hmm. So let's start there too. How much is TJ hurt by not being able to get to the quarterback, being held like crazy?
Well, I mean, the problem is that the NFL actually put that in writing. It's actually in the writing of the rule. And so the referees are then at that point just subject to what's actually in the rule book, as is Micah Parsons. When we talk about the best edge rushers in the game, I think TJ and Micah Parsons, those two are probably held more often than any of the other ones, and they rarely get it called. It's got to be pretty egregious, and it's got to be like we saw with TJ getting literally tackled from behind around the legs. Like, it's got to be something where it's just, okay, referees, like, you can't like not throw the flag there, but it definitely makes an impact because TJ, you know, he's not I mean, you stand next to him, you're like, wow, that's a pretty stacked human being, but compared to some of the other guys that he's contending with, he's not as big of a guy. He definitely relies more on his speed. He relies more on his get off when it comes to, you know, reacting to the snap of the football. And then, yeah, he's got some moves in there. Every good pass rusher has them, but when you're not a freak of an athlete like Myles Garrett, you're going to have to find different ways to
get there.
Yeah, exactly.
You just got to get there. Yeah. And it's going to be tougher for him than it is for Garrett. That's not something that I would weigh when comparing the two. I just think that what TJ does, like you said, from a more complete standpoint, and let's not leave this out too. Okay, because I know these are individual awards and everything else, but I also don't think you can boil them down to cold, hard statistics or even the most advanced of analytics, for the simple reason that Mike Tomlin brought this up earlier this season. Wow, does TJ come up with the play when you need it? You know, those game sealers, those soul crushers to the other side. And you obviously, nobody has to research this, can't have that for Garrett because his team stinks. His team's 2-8, and his team usually stinks.
Yeah, his team's 2-8. The defense itself has not been great. They're one of the worst like run defenses in terms of efficiency. When you look at like rush EPA and success rate and all that kind of stuff, they're near the bottom of the league. They aren't a good defense. And when you're really comparing this, when we're talking about awards and everything like that, it's typically like the best guy on one of the best defenses. And that was kind of the case last year. The Browns were an 11-6 football team last year. They had a really good defense, and Myles Garrett was the best of the bunch there. And
that's the same reason we wouldn't be talking about Trey Hendrickson. I mean, this is a handful and a half. The Bengals outside guy who's just unstoppable when he's on. You know, he's on the Bengals. Yep. I mean, there has to be some consideration to that, you know, the most valuable to their team, the way they do it in the NHL.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that the Steelers are one of the best defenses in the league right now, they're second in scoring, that's going to play a role when people actually sit down to vote on this award at the end of the season, you know, after the season's over. They're going to look, okay, the Steelers defense was one of the main reasons why they were successful this year, and TJ Watt was the best player on that defense, and he made plays in big time moments. It's going to be easy for them. Even like Myles Garrett, he's going to get some votes. I mean, he's just going to. He's having a pretty decent season, but he's still worse in every major statistic than TJ is, and so. It's just curious though, because, you know, the whole TJ versus Myles thing took a left turn this week whenever Myles is even asked about it in Cleveland by Cleveland reporters about how he felt about TJ skipping out on the NFL honors thing. And Myles wasn't like, he was, I have to bring the quote up, but I mean,
he said basically that that he should have been there or something to that effect. And I never want to hear a word of what that guy has to say after what he tried with Mason Rudolph. Okay.
Oh, well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I mean, that was so despicable. Let's not even get started on that. Last thing I have for you, Chris. Yeah. Are you a believer in Dan Moore versus Myles?
I'm a believer in Dan Moore +1 versus Myles.
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, it's just
why.
But why
does it happen?
Well, but I mean, Even Mike Tomlin said it. You can't just leave Dan Moore on an island out there against Myles Garrett. It's kind of a fool's errand. Yes, Dan Moore has had some success against Myles in the past, but you can't just automatically assume, because there have been some games where Myles has absolutely gotten the better of Dan Moore. Actually, the game in Cleveland last year.
The one last year, yep.
Yeah, that was one where Dan did not play well against Myles, and Myles kind of had his way. It was like very first snap. It was just bad from the get-go. And so, yeah, you've got to have some help over there, whether it's a chip, whether it's a full-blown double team, whatever it is.
How about if it's a full mountain? Can they put a full mountain on that side, Chris?
Well, you put Darnell Washington over there, I think I like your chances a lot better.
Well, guys, when we come back, J1Q.
Safety is a habit. Gun safety and responsible storage are no different. Help prevent gun accidents, misuse, and theft. Keep firearms safe and secure when not in use. For safe storage options, visit projectchildsafe.org.
Time now for today's J1Q, and for that we head out to the center part of the Commonwealth.
Hey Dan, Brian Hanford here from Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. Just have a quick question for J1Q. I hear you saying, stop the pitch outs, stop the pitch outs, stop the pitch outs. But could it be that Artie's just putting it on film so that later on we go the other way?
I love the shock value. That's actually the way you're envisioning this sequence happening, right? Put it on film and then boosh, go the other way. For one thing, for those of you who've been around the Steelers and or Mike Tomlin long enough, you'll remember the reference to the hip pocket plays. Those are the ones that Tomlin would say, and I couldn't tell if he was ever being serious or at least fully serious about it when he would say it, that they would save them kind of for a rainy day. They would save them for whenever things were really, really needed, and they had to have this element of unpredictability, and out it would be unleashed upon the world. Well, that's not something that's very common. You will see teams hold certain things for divisional opponents because of the familiarity that those teams will have with your personnel, with your schemes, even with your individual coaches. But you're not going to see that sort of thing on a common basis. Look, the pitch outs are just bad. I don't think they're a misdirection in either the literal or the figurative sense. They're just bad. They don't work. Now, Russell Wilson does have a history with pitch outs. He likes to keep the offense flowing left or right, whether that's with him rolling out or with his running backs moving with him. But if you look at the results of these plays, so often they're sliced up. The other team has a very easy time carving its way inside the tackles and getting not just one person over there, but a bunch of people over there. And they don't work. Whereas when you've seen the Steelers be at their most effective, and I'm talking now just about the running game, what are they doing? Yeah, they're pounding it. They're going right up the middle. And they do that. They're effective over the long haul of the game, even when they don't get yardage. Why? Because the other team's getting tired of having 22 or 30 come banging into them, especially 22. They're tired of having Darnell Washington knock them on their rear ends. So you benefit from that, even if it's just boring. So no, they're not trying anything. They just need to stop. Everyone, you too, need to stop trying to make the pitch out happen. It's not going to happen. It shouldn't happen. And I don't care who the running back is or what the circumstance is or hip pockets or anything else. Let's do another one of these tomorrow, everybody.